How LGBTQ is changing Gen Z. Yet another reaction to my boy Gen. I love his investigations because it gives you a place to think about. It helps you like discuss some important topics. And he really does a pretty damn good job. I will give him credit for it. I like the job he is doing. One thing that I'll check prior to this is how it is looking on the screen, but yeah, I think in general it's looking okay. So we're going to immediately dive into the topic. Let's check this out, what he wants to talk about.
Do you think people are born LGBTQ plus?
The Bible is wrong. Probably about 50% of sexual orientation is determined by our genetic inheritance.
People
Really?
were getting
Interesting.
it kind of, in a way, like forced down their throats every day.
I have a son who is transgender.
Wait, he's in the same city as always, I think. Which city is this? New York?
Oh my gosh, the LGBTQ community is under attack. No, we're not. Leave the kids out of it. There's no need for you to be around kids at all.
Boom. W man. I just want to check if it's working well. Yeah, it's working well on the stream. So W man.
So today I'm out here and the question I'll be asking is, should LGBTQ topics be taught in school?
As a queer person, I see that history as something
Like who? What is? I always have problem with queer people. Not that I disrespect them as people, but I can't like clearly see. I don't know. Maybe it's something in his voice. I mean, he's not that much. Although it depends on his shorts. His legs are. I think did he shave them? But I mean, shaving a lot of men shave legs who are a lot not queer at all. Yeah. In any case.
that needs to be taught to all people. I think it's important history just as much as anything else that's taught.
I don't see the value in teaching it. I think that they'll learn naturally about heterosexuality, homosexuality, everything like that as they age. Sexuality should just be kept out of schools.
I have
W another man. You see, that's why I don't hate LGBTQ plus community. They actually have people who like can speak up facts. I only give them respect. Wait, I have a message from my colleague. But play on, play on.
a son who is transgender. I would certainly hope that my child, at whatever age, could be accepted.
I kind of grew up going to like a Christian school and my family was very conservative. And so when I transitioned into public school and like I went to college, being around that all the time, I didn't realize there were so many people out there. If I would have been taught more, it wouldn't have been such a culture shock for me.
Kids are way too young to be exposed to personal agendas that people might have.
I think that there's a lot of people who are attracted to teaching kids things because they understand how young kids are more open to ideas. They're much more easy to be persuaded.
You don't lead off with George Washington was the first president of the country, and oh, by the way, he was heterosexual. I don't think LGBTQ would be that much different.
Wait, I just have to listen to this again because I was texting a friend.
Be persuaded.
You don't lead off with George Washington was the first president of the country, and oh, by the way, he was heterosexual. I don't think
This is like another W. Like, come on. Imagine you're sitting in a history class, like, yeah, now today's topic is Napoleon Bonaparte. First of all, yeah, he was a man. Second of all, he was a heterosexual man. God, that is just super hilarious. Like, yeah, the way they put out, and eventually it makes sense because this is how a lot of the times it is taught right now. I was in a class today at my uni, and believe me, I witnessed similar stuff, so I know what I'm talking about.
LGBTQ would be that much different. I would leave it up to the local community, whatever fits that community.
My name is Peter Tatchell. I'm the director of a small human rights organization, Peter Tatchell Foundation.
Oh, what about Putin? Well, let me read something about Putin. Genuinely don't care about LGBTQ like protests. They don't bother me, let's say like this, as much as Putin fails to act against Chechnya. Well, to be fair, that there's a lot of controversy. There's that. I don't think like depends. I can't read the whole poster, so I'm not going to like make conclusions right now. So because I genuinely don't get yet what he's trying to tell.
Peter Tatchell Foundation, and I've been campaigning on both LGBT plus and other human rights for.
Okay, W for Ukraine. Commonwealth countries. I can't see it. 10% wealth tax. Okay, so you're also a text fighter.
Over 56 years.
Should LGBTQ topics be taught in schools?
It's very important to challenge ignorance and prejudice among young straight kids who perhaps don't understand LGBTs. This can be a very important, significant way of reducing teasing, bullying, and even in extreme cases, violence.
Yes and no. Each grade is so different in what you're learning and what their bodies are going through, and when we get to baby making, like in 8th, 9th grade, whenever that is, then you can bring on the topic of, yeah, and there are some guys who, just can't do stuff with women.
So in that instance, to what extent do you think LGBTQ topics should be taught then? Does it involve just sex education, talking about historical issues?
Leave the sexuality stuff to 8th, 9th grade. There's no need for elementary schools and 5th graders and 4th graders to be given prompts like, oh, what's your pronoun?
I think if it's taught, at a young age, people will be more likely to express themselves.
Definitely something that should be in history class because a lot has changed and progressed.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be by pulling penises in front of their faces. I think this is the huge problem that a lot of times we're facing right now. It should be taught, of course, it should be, but it shouldn't be exaggerated and really taking the more amount of time as it has to take. Like, I don't think that this is. If you talk about history classes, you genuinely probably need one class where you mix LGBTQ, where you mix racism. Like, I think this, like, you mix LGBTQ and all these, let's say, like, these communities that get discriminative for their physical aspects. I think it should be taught in that topic, but not really pushed into, oh wow, you know what? LGBTQ, this is, you gotta see it with your bare eyes. We gotta investigate this like such a more deeply. You know what? Let's make a whole course around it. Gender studies majors.
Teaching LGBT plus history. Famous LGBTs like the Russian composer Peter Tchaikovsky, the great mathematician and computer codebreaker Alan Turing. These are people that we should all know about, and we should know the fact that they were LGBT or T.
How about like sex education? Should kids be taught that at a young age?
Parents can't stop their kids from doing what they want to do. At the end of the day, don't you want your kids to be safe if they are going to be doing those things?
There's always going to be guidelines, but I think those guidelines need to be written with a public health view, not necessarily just in terms of what the current political climate might be.
We're going to make sure that parents are able to send their kid to kindergarten without having some of this stuff injected into their school curriculum.
Because on one extreme, there's legislation in Florida banning any mention of gay, and on the other, encouraging drag story hours. And so
That's the problem we're having. That is the problem we're having. We don't have a problem with you people actually being pro LGBTQ. We have a problem that this little kid or this kid who probably doesn't even know the Pythagoras theorem yet, and he's already getting injected by. Okay, I don't want to use the word injected because it sounds kind of not like me. I would say he gets already pushed towards thinking this stuff. So when he comes home from school and he has to learn the Pythagoras theorem, and instead he is thinking about drag queens, interesting. I gotta investigate that topic much. I'm an 8-year-old kid, but I shouldn't be learning math right now. I should be more concerned with this.
So no pun intended, there's a wide spectrum of opinions. But regardless of opinion, there's been undeniable progress over the years. And so in such a polarized topic, it was going to be harder than ever to find the nuance. At the same time, is this even a real issue, or are we just making a problem out of nothing? I
Make a problem out of
we
nothing.
don't see. In religious and a lot of conservative communities, I think there's probably a lot of resistance to having this being taught in schools. How can schools navigate?
Even by the representatives of their communities. I mean, how many clips have we seen of people coming out and saying, I am LGBTQ and I am against what the agenda they're pushing? There's super a lot of clips in any social media you want to check. TikTok, YouTube, doesn't matter. So yeah, It's not about the community in general, it's about the values they sometimes push.
Their sensitivities while also promoting inclusivity.
It's not the job of any school to promote any sexuality or gender identity. The purpose is to give young kids the facts, to have happy, healthy sexual and emotional lives.
I do believe in separation of church and state and public education.
I understand. 1 second, what did he say here?
To promote any sexuality or gender identity. The purpose is to give young kids the facts, to have happy, healthy sexual and emotional lives.
Yeah, but what you talking about the sexual life when you talk about an 8-year-old, 9-year-old? I mean, you can't just take away puberty. Like, I agree with this guy. It should be like learned, etc. But again, we're talking about like sexual. Like, why do you even need to raise the topic of sex before the kiddo is like 12 years old? Yeah, he's going to find it out eventually, probably by himself. But you don't raise this because he can't feel it. He can't feel it the same way as grown-ups can, as even his older teen colleagues. So, and it's not like drugs you're trying to teach not to take, or cigarettes you're trying people to limit kids from smoking. It's not like that because it's something that they have to grow up to really understand. You can't just spit up facts to an 8-year-old about sex the same way you're going to do it to an 18-year-old. But that's the problem we're having right now. One of the problems.
I do believe in separation of church and state, and public education is a public good.
Do you think parents should have like a right to have their kid be opt out in education like that?
That's kind of a slippery slope when you start getting into allowing parents to opt out of each and every topic. Part of learning, right? You're not just trying to exclude topics that you're not happy about.
It's all or nothing. Either you say no and you teach your kid about sex, or you're gonna let the school teach your kid about sex and let it be known that there are some people out there who just happen to be with same sex.
Boom. I think this guy just pointed out a very important topic. Either you parents decide, or it's up to other people to. Sorry, I was just texting. Either you decide how you're going to teach your kids, or you let the school, but you can't control the school, unfortunately. Like, not even unfortunately. I mean, you are the parent, you have to raise your kid normally, so that what he gets in school only helps him in the development of his life. Let's put it like this.
May not like the fact that their kids are LGBT, but I'm sure they wouldn't want them to get HIV. We need to give that information really loud and clear to all kids, whatever their gender identity. Love and relationships are two of the most important things in most people's lives.
Would you say that true. Not talking about
I think every single person's life. You can't. I think that because it's the least explainable thing, like love, you can't just explain it. It's just something that you can't scientifically, even philosophically, it's super hard to explain. I think that is why it's such a valuable thing and why it's still the most important thing in anyone's life.
LGBTQ topics can lead to further discrimination and hinder progress as a society.
Naturally, as you live your life and as you age and mature, you learn about this stuff in the real world. It's like the most mainstream ever thing right now. People are getting it kind of, in a way, like forced down their throats every day in every aspect of society. There's a difference between knowledge or awareness around a topic and also pushing, people to operate in certain dynamics. Let's say, as an example, you go to a classroom and they teach you that you as an individual have 50 genders, right? Versus teaching someone that there was a one point in time in history where people thought that way. But I don't think that we should be explaining certain concepts like this that just don't align with biology,
Do you think at this point LGBTQ has as many rights as, let's say, straight people?
I think more. Even on like public companies now, they're required
Come on. You can't win an Oscar if you don't have a representative in the LGBTQ community. Companies, quotas, come on. Obviously, you have more rights. And I don't want another one the toilet aspect to get raised right now. Not even for once.
have diversity as far as sexuality goes on the board. Companies are probably more likely to hire someone who identifies as not straight or not the norm. And so I think that it's pretty pushed and celebrated.
That is
If I had to push back on that, though, I've also read statistics that say that whenever employers see, let's say, like a they them pronoun on a resume, they actually are less likely to get hired.
I think it might be fears that they're going to be super difficult to deal with as people.
But wouldn't that, in that instance, kind of contradict that they have more rights, or
maybe you're right. Yeah.
So
I'm not though sure that like they them. Like again, it depends. I think that if you have quotas, I think no. But if you talk about like really other companies who say it's gonna be hard to deal with them, that's why some of them don't get hired, like to very high positions. They get hired somewhere to like get shown if they're hired for their sexuality. Like they're not there to actually do the job, but they're there to represent the community, which is very different. The company eventually gives you a different role. So yeah, but you don't hire a white guy to represent white guys. You hire a white guy to get the job done.
it's clear that generalizing an entire group with diverse identities and representations is damn near impossible. So I wonder if focusing on the individuals would change opinion.
Whenever, viewers see this, they're gonna be like, wow, I thought, all the gay people got along with the trans and the queers. Just how, wow, you must be Asian, so you must love all the other Asians.
It's frustrating because I grew up being told, oh, Amir, you're black and you're gay, so you probably have to be like this, expect to vote a certain way. The most free person, I would say, in this country, culturally, is white people. You got white people that are skateboarding, you got white women outside hiking, you got white people doing everything. But for black people, you have a black man hiking, why are you doing white people? We're the first to want all this diversity and all this equality, but then the first to shun someone for actually stepping out of the line and doing something different. Same in the gay community. We preach all this diversity and love, tolerance, acceptance, but we're the first to cancel somebody for having a different viewpoint. You want diversity of everything else except diversity of thought.
Do you think there should be a separate curriculum for LG and B and T?
When it comes to the TQ plus stuff, I see leave it to psychology. Gay, straight, and bi, it's literally just sex. TQ plus.
Genuinely, I know so many gays, so many lesbian people, so many bisexual people. They're like, and I as a heterosexual don't see any difference compared to them. Like genuinely, because we don't interact in that physical, we don't interact physically that much for me to see it. While as with a queer person, non-binary, etc., that is more of a psychological thing. I actually agree with this guy. Yeah, smart words coming from his mouth.
Endless gender.
Who says like this? Smart words come from his mouth. Come on, zynoVII. Be a little more respectful to people.
Identities, how we're describing ourselves, it's all unnecessary. After gay marriage, a lot of the gays were fine. We were chilling. Everything trans and all these different genders, they have nothing to do with gay people. If anything, gay relations are getting worse.
But when some
again, same thing. Bathrooms. Although no, the T doesn't go well here. Yeah, because T is probably somewhere else.
Teachers refuse to even cover these topics, can inclusivity even be achieved? The study suggests that only 57% of teachers across the country wish to discuss LGBTQ issues with their students. But
that's more than a half, come on. What you mean only?
People are trying to change that.
The organization History Unerased says its mission is to make LGBT topics a part of the U.S.
Unerased history. Since when it was erased?
Mainstream curriculum.
History Unerased is a program that funds LGBTQ education in K-12 schools, supporting teacher training and providing resources.
It provided us with curriculum materials that actually give kids opportunity.
No offense, but by her looks, I can already see that, yes. If you were a representative, I would believe that. If you would have claimed that you're a representative of this community, I would absolutely believe you.
To grapple with primary sources of actual events that occurred that affect this community.
So whether it was teaching students about iconic activists like Sylvia Rivera and Bayard Rustin, the goal was to make sure that history wasn't forgotten. But of course, not everyone is happy.
We don't want our children forced to be taught things that go against what we believe as Christians.
Many parents across the country oppose the teaching of sexual orientation and gender identity to their kids. And parents are beginning to oppose it to a point where a recent outbreak between Antifa and religious Middle Eastern parents broke out.
Do not assume that everyone's boundaries are the same.
What's more, it's
That's
not
true.
just the parents. In 2021, Tennessee passed a law requiring schools to give parents a 30-day notice before teaching LGBTQ, giving parents the right to review and opt out on behalf of their children. And it's
They don't understand, but they're a very lucky country. If they have time to pass laws like these, about 30 days of parents thinking if they want specific LGBTQ stuff taught to their children, if they have these laws passed seriously on, as I understand, that's governor's level. Probably I'm not. I misheard it before, and I don't want to skip back. But if they actually do it, they're a very lucky country. Because if this is your biggest problem that you need to resolve, I wonder how many countries would wish that would be such a big problem for them.
It's impacting what's being shown to kids. In 2021, the American Library Association counted 729 challenges to library, school, and university materials. And one book in particular.
This book is gay. That's an amazing title. No offense, I have never seen a book called This Book is Heterosexual. This is just super weird, I'm sorry.
That was deemed the most inappropriate.
The book is called Gender Queer. It's a memoir of the author's journey of self-identity.
Gender Queer by Maya Kobabe was banned because of its LGBTQ content and use of sexually explicit images.
Graphic illustrations, full nudity.
So it's clear that both...
And that refers back to when I was talking about 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. Why the hell are you pushing nudity into their books? They're kids. Give them Superman. Give them Spider-Man. Don't make him queer, because he was never queer. And if you want a queer create a queer superhero. Like, genuinely. You know, it's like the whole problem was, for example, you have Spider-Man, and they are trying to make him gay, or make characters they're gay. Yo, create an actually queer superhero. I don't know, bisexual superhero if you really wish that. Okay, non-binary superhero. And try to influence through there, showing that, yeah, even you, kids who think you're being left out, even you can be superheroes. But don't affect what has already been stabilized, what has already worked as a system, and try to inject. I know I criticized this word before, but it really passes well here. Inject these ideas into what's already been a stable thing.
Both sides of opinions on what the best approach is, but is this leading to pushing political agendas instead of what's best for the kids? And what I realize is that when it comes to this topic, are we even asking the right people? And so who better to ask than someone who's been in the trenches for the past 60 years?
If you don't mind me asking, are you a gay individual yourself? Did you know from like a young age?
Even though I came out from a very, very devoutly evangelical Pentecostal family where homosexuality was a terrible, terrible sin, I just had a very simple coming out. I just thought the Bible is wrong. I love this man. He loves me. We're happy. We're not harming anybody else. This is beautiful. I never had any guilt or shame. I just accepted it. I just thought, you know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the eating was very delicious.
Do you think people are born LGBTQ plus, or do you think it's the environment that leads them to be LGBTQ plus?
Well, the evidence is pretty clear that probably about 50% of sexual orientation is determined by our genetic inheritance, and another very substantial proportion is determined by hormonal influences in the womb.
But if both sides are basing their arguments on whether preferences can be influenced or not, it seems to be essential.
Again, he is talking about LGB at the moment. I'm not even sure about T or especially Q, I, A, etc., etc. He's genuinely talking about sex right now. About who are you physically wanting to, I'm sorry, fuck. In this thing, I agree, maybe, yeah. You don't get, maybe not from the beginning, maybe you think something and then you understand, well, no, it's wrong. I actually want to stick my thing into a guy's ass. But that's not the fool, because the title says, I don't know if you can see, yeah, I can see, it says, okay, LGBTQ. And that changes everything completely.
Central point. Because even though some studies suggest that there's no specific gay gene, they have found that genes can account for 8 to 25% of the reasons behind people having preferences.
There are many genetic traits that contribute to sexual orientation.
Regardless, it's clear that sexuality is complex and biology isn't the only factor. So it raises the question, how big of a...
If it was the only factor, I think there would be no TQB, etc., etc. That the only reason this even exists is because we decided to move past biology and just not necessarily skip it, but only include it in our topics. But yeah, is it right or wrong? Well, I can only share my opinions. I'm not here to judge.
What role does the environment play then? There's been a couple statistics indicating that a lot of Gen Z or the youth are identifying more with LGBTQ and that it's been on the rise. Do you think this has been a result of a lot more of an environment of acceptance towards those identities? Or do you think it's been more of a kind of like a push that has created...
Both. I think it's both, to be fair. There are those who are necessarily affected by the push, but there are also a lot who have been more free to come out. That is absolutely true.
An identity crisis among the youth.
I think it's probably like a
50-50.
social contagion to some degree. If you push a certain ideology or sexuality super hard and say that it's like very positive, kids are very influenced. I think that
Yeah.
they will tend to like be pushed into that direction.
I think a lot of it now has to do with acceptance. Because I mean, I'm looking back at myself. If I grew up now and I'm seeing how normal it is to be gay, and that's what all of this is, I probably just been like, oh, more people identifying as gay, it makes sense because they're just accepting that part of themselves.
When society kind of doesn't discriminate as much or doesn't have such a negative stigma attached to something, then people are more free to be who they are. You do you.
I think we talk about it more. That may be the reason why it seems like there's more of that.
When I was growing up, the overwhelming pressure from everybody was to be straight. Yet here I am, I'm gay. Public advocacy or public depictions of sexuality can't make someone LGBT if they're not already...
They can push, man. Come on. Especially if we're talking about kids. Especially if you're talking about kids. Because a lot of the ideas and even attractions, I mean, I cannot explain why, but I'm a huge fan of olives. And one of the reasons that people tell that I'm a huge fan of olives is because when my mother was pregnant, she used to eat a lot of olives when she was pregnant with me. And then when I was a little kid, I always ate olives. And right now, even if I'm not necessarily like, picking stuff like this, okay, what I'm going to eat. But if I see olives on the table, I just have to grab them. I really, not even if they're not the most delicious, I know there are better olives than these, but they are olives. I have to eat them. So, but again, since from my very childhood, from the very time when I was in the womb, I was consuming olives. It brought me, because taste is a physical aspect, it brought me physical attraction. Right now, when I'm a grown-up man, I do eat, how do I say it? I am more attracted to like the taste of olives. Thank you for the advertisement suggestion, but no.
that way inclined.
People
Another
are
spam.
longing for identity, and people look for ways to put themselves into a box, even though they don't really want to be. And when people get social fame, when people get attention, that's going to attract people that are lost, and kids are lost.
So now people are, I guess, being pushed even if there is question to one way or the other.
If my son came to me and he was like, hey, I think I'm gay, I'm like, that's totally fine that you believe that, and let's figure out if this is actually true, versus just immediately saying, congratulations, I'm glad that the things that I thought when I was super young, I don't think nowadays anymore. If I would have been held to the things I thought when I was 12 years old, that would not have been good.
That is absolutely freaking true. Like, look at your decisions and your calls at your age of 12, and think if right now would those ideas really be helpful in your life, and would they be right? God, I even look at myself 2 years ago. I was a completely different human being. even a year ago, I still had slightly a lot of views that I wouldn't like pushing nowadays.
So you don't need me to state the obvious, but almost everyone can agree that we've had significant changes in our thinking, our world, and who we are since our childhood. But as society becomes more accepting, has this debate of what's appropriate by age kept up with the changes? So I think a lot of the controversy too, kind of related with this, has been around drag queens, whether it be drag story hour or kids being allowed to attend drag brunch, where, you know, there's been some maybe even video footage of pretty sexually explicit.
Like this kid and this. This is the problem we're having. I don't have a problem if he goes out and says he's gay or he's bisexual. I have a problem that from this age, when I was 10 years old watching cartoons, Tom and Jerry, Shrek, I don't care, Chip and Dale, he's going there and watching basically someone spinning their ass.
Acts being performed at that. Do you think kids should be allowed in these types of environments?
I think it's weird.
I mean, there is a line that that should not be crossed, obviously, and I don't think kids should necessarily be exposed to that per se. But there are worse places for people to be than a drag show.
At the end of the day, like, you have to let kids kind of.
Yeah, obviously, drugstores probably affect worse because they can intentionally already you plug a drug yourself, but overdose a kid who can't control it because they're super young, or alcohol. Probably physically for their life it's worse, but man, that's such a huge hit on your psychology if you're a little child.
Learn and experience and grow for themselves and just kind of guide them along the way.
To work now, say no more limits to strip clubs, yeah? Any age can take. You can take your 4-year-old daughter. No, take your daughter to. It was to take your daughter to work. Now it's going to be take your daughter to a strip club. There are reasons why we ban this. But some people just come out and say, yeah, we're just drags. We're trying to teach these kids something. Believe me, we're doing a lot of similar things, but it's not the same, absolutely. It's teaching. It's thoughtful. We're caring about the future generations. Hey, Gen Alpha, let's see what you got in here.
To a strip club. Your job and your income comes from you stripping off your clothes at night in front of gay men. Leave the kids out of it. There's no need for you to be around kids at all.
The drag story time
Exactly what I just said.
have been very effective at engaging more young people in reading. A stripper is something completely different. It's just been exaggerated, sensationalized, and so on by, you know, homophobes and right-wing critics.
It bugs me so much that people are really advocating and fighting for this and saying, oh my gosh, the LGBTQ community is under attack. No, we're not. You just have some weirdos that are trying to twerk and dance in front of children.
And so could it be said that this is all just an exaggeration?
I'm with the black guy. Don't put this
up. Like Clinton, Monroe,
sorry, I just got like shocked from the moment.
Story hours and
maybe. I mean, if I saw this in my dreams, I would have woken up and told my parents that I had a nightmare. Why is this should be acceptable like in a good thing? I don't know. If something is scary. Oh no, I don't think you can see my screen here. Wait. Now listen, technically, just technically, this guy is supposed to be scary. I unfortunately cannot set the two images, but am I the only one who's seeing this?
then was arrested for public indecency. Are we only looking at the...
You got my point! That's too creepy!
Extreme cases from both sides to form a...
Plus, come on, man. I can't even look at this.
Perception of an issue, even if there isn't one. And after asking various questions to gather various opinions,
I always thought it was
one
various
final
questions.
question to get to the root of the issue. So I can focus on what really matters. I needed the tools to make my life easier. Simply being blown out of proportion. Doing these interviews too, it made me think, do you think this is actually really a big issue? Or do you think this is being overblown by, let's say, both sides?
I don't think it's being overblown. This is a topic that most definitely needs to be talked about.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's one of those things where you would think overnight this became the single biggest topic in the history of America. You go through life and it's just, I just don't think this is that big of a deal. Like a lot of things in the press that
That's what I said before. The country's living a very well life. Americans are super lucky that this is their biggest problem.
they make it a big deal. So whether it's certain groups or whether it's the media, I think they have just pushed this to a point where it's just kind of absurd.
I think it has been blown out of all proportion, and it's very clear that right-wing pundits are using this issue as a culture war.
I do think it's going to become a bigger problem as time goes on because
Why only the right? I mean, what about talk about the left? They're using it the same way, and it's a cultural war. That's why you don't stand on both sides. Stand out of the war.
the divide is going to cause a lot of problems, and it's actually going to cause people to go both these ways.
On one end, yes, it is very small scale. It's happening in various cities and it's being called out and blown up. But on the flip side, we don't know how far it's going to go. Stop the train where it's at.
A lot of people might also say, for example, this might be a first world problem. What would you say to that statement?
I mean, there are larger issues at hand on a global scale, but that doesn't mean that we need to diminish the issues that are, in our backyard as well.
Yeah, because all problems are also perspective as well. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You study history, you study the Roman Empire, they built it up into this huge empire, then they started falling apart when they started just dealing with issues like this. Both sides are getting ridiculously worked up over a topic that's just, if you were not on social media, you just wouldn't even know this is an issue.
But as always, nothing in life is ever accomplished through indifference. And that's exactly why reasonable awareness is so important to inspire action, even if it's just
reasonable awareness. Reasonable goddammit awareness.
Acknowledge the progress made.
What do you think are some of the struggles that LGBTQ plus still face today?
Well, we know from the research that the level of violence is much higher than average. The abusive practice of so-called conversion therapy, the attempt to change someone's sexuality, religious communities and minority ethnic communities, it's much more difficult for LGBT plus people to come out and find acceptance. So yeah, there are still battles to fight and win.
Because whether you're gay or straight or trans, the struggle of discovering and accepting your identity is something that we can all share. And when we can start seeing each other as humans living on the same spinning rock, we can move beyond the extreme opinions and recognize that many of these extremes are in.
This is not a real mom. The video was made by a crew known for provocative classroom scenes with recurring actors and set their views. Discussion.
Intentionally being manufactured to piss you off. Because to keep balance in society, we need those that are advocating for progress, as well as those who are keeping a check on uncontrolled change. And it's only by challenging your own perceptions that you can start thinking for yourself and not just going along with whatever side you're on. And that's exactly the mission, to explore the unfamiliar. Thanks to our sponsor, Exter.
I love his views are just all be together, be happy, yay, everything's gonna be good. Guys, this was another reaction to, well, let me just take this message away from chat because this is some kind of spam. In any case, this was yet another video reaction to my boy Jen. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to stop. I'm just gonna press. Oh no, I don't know how to do it. Yeah, in any case, this was another reaction to my boy Jen, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this, and I really appreciate if you have watched it till the end, because I had the genius idea right now. If I'm not going to forget it by the time I upload this, I'm going to put a very controversial title to this video. And I'm going to see actually how many people are going to finish it. I'm genuinely want to see if people are going to watch the whole reaction to find something weird, or they're just gonna comment on the title. I hope most of you are not, and those who probably finished this, well, thank you for watching me, And for you who are watching me on YouTube, I'll see you in my next reactions. For you watching me on Twitch, we're going to our second reaction of the day. But I'll see you anytime else then. YouTuber viewers, bye bye.